This episode of Snack Size is brought to you by Snacks by Lala. Elevate your look with bold, long-lasting matte lipsticks and dazzling lip glosses. Whether you're on stage or on the go, Snacks by Lala delivers stunning color that lasts all day. Visit www.snacksbylala.com and treat yourself to a snack. Because you deserve it.
Hey Snacks, it's Lala! Welcome to Snack Size. I am thrilled to be here sharing this wonderful space with you, and I'm ready to take you on an exciting journey towards finding your passion and following your dreams. So whether you're discovering new interests, setting bold goals, or just looking for a dash of inspiration, know that every moment is worth celebrating and every dream is within reach. So grab a snack and get comfortable because we're about to dive into another fabulous episode where we celebrate the beauty of being unapologetically you. Our time together starts now. Hey Snacks! Welcome back to Snack Size the podcast, and today it is a solo episode. No guest, just me, and we are going to dive into something deeply personal, which is my journey with weight loss. Now, if you've been following me on social media, you know I've had an amazing year. I started my makeup line. I have opened for RuPaul's Drag Race winner Sasha Colby. Restarting this podcast has definitely been a thing, and I have so many things to celebrate. But if you have seen me in real life, then you know that I have lost 80 pounds this year. If you know me from the podcasting world, then you're familiar with my transparency around my struggle with type 2 diabetes, but I am proud to share that my latest A1C test results came back within the normal range, and I am feeling healthier than ever before. I'm in an incredible place health-wise right now, but getting here wasn't easy. It required significant changes and challenges that I actually am excited to talk about today. So I want to discuss what changed, what stayed the same, and why this journey has been so much more than losing weight and numbers on the scale. Before we jump in, I do want to make it clear, I'm not a doctor, a therapist, or any kind of health and wellness professional. So my goal here isn't to offer medical advice, but I do want to share my personal experiences as a fellow human navigating life just like you. One of the things I'm so grateful for in my life is that I've reached a place of confidence and security enough to be vulnerable and share my story with you on a platform like this. So my only hope in this episode is that by offering insight into my own life, it may help you gain perspective on you and your own experiences. Topics like weight, body image, self-love, and acceptance are very sensitive topics. So first, I want you to know if you are struggling that it is okay, and I encourage you to seek any help that you need. I also want you to remember that you are not alone. And that's actually the reason why I've decided to speak openly about my journey. And while not all of it is pretty, it's important to stay true to what happened for me. So, if parts of my story resonate with you, I encourage you to reflect on why that might be and have those conversations with yourself about what you appreciate about yourself or what you might want to change. Whether it's health, career, relationships, or anything else. Checking in with yourself on where you're at and where you're headed is absolutely crucial. That's actually really how this episode came to be. So as always, I thank each and every one of you for being on this journey with me. And now, let's get into it. Growing up, the world that I lived in made sure that I knew 4 things for sure. First is that I was male and that I was expected to conform to all of society's standards about what it means to be a man. Second is that I was Black, which was a source of pride. I was very proud to be Black, but it was also something I had to fear because, let's be real, we all know what it means to be a Black man in America sometimes. Third is that I was gay. So much so that I could not hide it, and that was a difficult experience as a child. I know that I just very quickly mentioned 3 heavy topics that I've discussed in other episodes, and I probably will revisit in future ones, but today I want to focus on the 4th thing the world made sure I knew, and that is that I was fat. Navigating these 4 aspects of my identity as a child and as a young adult is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. Some things I couldn't change about myself. Others I hadn't yet learned how to change, and some I didn't know that I actually really loved about myself yet. But the point of that is I spent most of my young life wanting to be someone different. In each of those areas, society has so much to say about who you are and what you can do and who you're going to be. So imagine dealing with all 4 at once. It was no way for a child to live. I remember looking at TV and magazines and even just my neighbors and people on the street, and I kept seeing reflections of what some call the American dream, which is white, thin, heterosexual, and socially acceptable. For some people, that may be a dream life, but I knew in my heart, even when I tried to deny it, that dream was never going to be who I was. So I was immersed in this environment, and at the time, my focus was to conform as much as possible. I didn't know how toxic that mindset was, nor did I know that I would spend the rest of my life learning to love myself again. And I say the rest of my life because I firmly believe that loving yourself is a choice you make actively every day, and it's my intention to make that choice for as long as I live. But back to growing up, because society consistently told me who I was in their eyes, it wasn't until middle school, and it was around the time that I came out to someone for the first time, that I actually realized I'm never going to be a white, thin, heterosexual, heteronormative person. It was the same time I started figuring out who I actually was rather than who I was expected to be. So I would say the next 5 years of my life were spent doing just that. And I discovered that my thing was that I was big. And I don't mean just physically. Yes, I was always the biggest and tallest in my class, and I wore adult clothes and shoes well before my peers. But being big for me was also about my big personality, my big talent, and my big passion for life. I started to embrace the fact that I stood out and leaned into everything that made me me. When I walked into a room, people noticed. And since they were looking anyway, I might as well give them a show. I became funnier because if people were gonna laugh, I might as well give them something to laugh at. I usually found myself pursuing interests like writing and poetry that most kids my age didn't. And I think that was because I felt most comfortable being the only one doing something, because I had spent a lot of my life being singled out. I always wanted to be the biggest and brightest star in the constellation in any situation. And I have to say that this mindset and acceptance that I had about myself was to my benefit, as it was the only way I found as a young child to reconcile all of the things I had been told were wrong with me and turn them into strengths. So being big became a huge part of my identity. However, fast forward to 3 years ago when my doctor told me that I had type 2 diabetes and that I needed to lose weight if I wanted a chance at a healthy life. That was terrifying. Not just because of the health implications, but because after spending so many years embracing my identity, and that included my size, I had no idea who I would be if I wasn't big. By that point, I love being large and in charge. I built a whole drag career on embracing my bigger body and still being fabulous. My image was very much based on the concept of go big or go home. I loved everything big, loud, flashy, and that included my body. So, I get this news. it clearly changes my life, and it is time for me to get serious about my health. But the scary part wasn't about losing weight. It felt like I had to get to know myself or change who I was all over again. And that was the most terrifying part. So I processed my emotions, and while I'm processing them, I began to realize that being big isn't just about weight or eating too much food. And don't get me wrong, I love food. I am the snack after all, and I still love food today. But it was more about feeling a need to be big, because for most of my life, owning that was the only way I felt seen. If I wasn't big, I had no idea how I would act or feel or move through the world as I had known it for so many years. I quickly realized that my self-image and the story I created about myself had to change for me to get to a better place with my health, and that was actually scarier than any diet or workout regimen. If I wanted to live a long, happy, and fulfilled life, I had to change. And that is where my weight loss journey began. So, now you might be wondering, what did I do to get to where I am now? And the obvious answer is that I changed my lifestyle. But my story isn't unique in that regard. There are countless resources out there on lifestyle changes for better health. We've all heard the advice: work out, eat healthier, cut out sweets and carbs, all of that. And yes, all of those are things I did. But what I feel isn't talked about enough is the mental changes you have to make to truly lose weight. Losing weight isn't just about shedding body fat. If you are unhappy with your weight or it's affecting your health, I think that the change starts in your mind before you ever change your diet or exercise routine. All of us have a unique relationship with food and body image, how we think others see us, but most importantly, also how we see ourselves. If that doesn't change, or you're not willing to change your mindset, any actions that you're going to take aren't going to stick because you haven't committed to them fully. I do want to say that while losing weight is a part of my journey, I actually firmly believe there are healthy, happy, fulfilled people out there who may be considered overweight from a medical perspective. And I love them and support them 100%. But in my situation, my weight was impacting my health and life. So losing it wasn't just about losing body fat. It also had a lot to do with letting go of the inner dialogue, the trauma, the self-concept, and honestly, all the baggage that got me to that point. I knew that before the weight could go, all of that had to go first. So I'm going to share with you what I did mentally to get to a healthier place in my life. The first thing I did is the most important. So if you only take one piece of advice away from this episode, let it be this. You cannot reach a version of yourself that you love by hating yourself along the way. And let me say that again. You cannot hate yourself on the journey to becoming someone you love. This is a lesson in self-compassion, and it's not just related to losing weight. Self-compassion is essential for growth and moving forward in life, no matter what changes you're aiming for. So for me, it wasn't that I hated myself because of my size, but I did really struggle with the shame that came with the type 2 diabetes diagnosis. There is a stigma around type 2 diabetes that makes it very, very difficult to share with friends and family. But at the same time, I knew if I was going to make all these big changes, I needed their support. Telling my friends was actually easier than telling my family. I remember a conversation with my mother where she suggested I stop performing to focus on my health. And from an outsider's perspective, I can see why she would say that. But for me, internally, it felt like I would be punishing myself. Don't get me wrong, health is a priority. But I knew that if I was going to fight for a longer life, I also needed something worth living for. And as you all know, I live to be on stage. In that moment, I decided I wasn't going to compromise on the things that truly mattered to me. I wasn't going to let a diagnosis stop me from living the life I wanted or make me feel ashamed that I had to completely change everything at once. I decided to continue pursuing everything I loved while figuring out how to make healthier choices along the way. But since we are talking about priorities, actually the second thing I did was I got really clear on my priorities. Sometimes life just happens, and I know for me, I'm so often busy, whether it's work, a show, a photo shoot, a costume fitting, or, even a podcast recording. I'm the type of person who is always on the go. I find myself rushing into the grocery store 10 minutes before closing because it's the only time I have left, and that's just how life goes sometimes. I'm sure you have days like that too. But the point is, when life gets hectic, we don't often give ourselves the space to check in with ourselves. When was the last time you truly checked in with yourself? And I don't mean venting to a friend or maybe even treating yourself after a long week, which are both great things to do. But what I'm talking about is sitting quietly with yourself and asking, how am I, really? Most people probably haven't done that in a while. I know that for me, that might have been part of the reason I didn't notice the signs that my body was giving me sooner. So when I started this new chapter, I had to get clear on what I wanted, what I didn't want, and how I was going to get there. When I did take that time to sit down with myself, my priorities actually became very clear and very quickly. And of course, I had very specific goals because I'm a super specific person with big dreams. So yes, I had a lot of things I wanted to do, but if I really summed it all up, I wanted to live a life filled with love. So in that moment, I agreed that I would first love myself. And that meant accepting where I was at. And I mean fully accepting it. Taking responsibility for how I got there, but also not bashing myself. I also had to be clear on where I was going. And loving myself meant I would do the best I could do to love myself first in terms of my health, mental and physical, and always honor who I was. Second, I committed to doing all the things I love. While I needed to be much more mindful about my health, I knew I was not going to let a diagnosis stop me from pursuing my dreams. I knew I still wanted to remain focused on the goals and dreams that I had set for myself because they made me happy. Lastly, I was only going to accept love from the people in my life, and anyone who wasn't offering that simply had to go. I've talked about this in other episodes of this podcast, but to lightly recap, life has brought me through some really hard moments. I have been homeless in the past, estranged from my family, a difficult breakup, and at this point in my timeline, we're talking about me facing a serious health issue. And each experience taught me more about the people in my life. And what I learned was the people who will make a difference in your life are the ones that will stand in the rain with you when they have a choice to be dry. I always saw myself as a person who needed these types of friends, but I realized the word need can be really disempowering. So instead, I decided to say that I deserve that type of love and support, solely based on the fact that that's how I show up for people in my life. And if it wasn't there in return, I didn't have the energy to invest in people who couldn't offer that to me, because I had to put that energy into myself, now more than ever. So that leads me to my third piece of advice on this. If you're thinking about making a big change in your life, I cannot stress enough the importance of surrounding yourself with positive influences. Now, this is probably something you've heard before, but I know what I didn't expect is how resistant people are to change, even when it has nothing to do with them, and even when it's a good thing for you. I started my journey to change my life by first getting into therapy, and I started working with a nutritionist, which actually is very similar to therapy, but we talk mostly about my relationship with food on a bi-weekly basis. As you would expect, as I worked on myself, things started to change. For example, I started cooking at home more and not going out to eat, which is a social thing that I love to do with my friends. I also started drinking less, and I prioritized rest instead of going out to the club. For things like birthdays and parties, I would actually turn down sweets just to make sure I was staying on track with my health goals. And surprisingly, these changes made people feel some type of way. I really didn't understand it at first. Like, you see me out here trying to be healthier. But after some thought, I realized when you've shown up as a person consistently in someone's life in a certain way, and then, at least to them, you suddenly change, it does take some getting used to. Some people were able to adjust to the changes I had made, and others just weren't. And you know what? Both are okay. Some relationships I had with people became stronger, and those are the people that really helped me on my way to get to where I'm at now. I also took time to find new people who I now had shared experiences with. So you may have heard my episode with Stacey McDonald, a chef from LA who is also diabetic, and we've become friends since that episode. I also now have Matt in my life who I met on a date, and we both shared that we are both diabetic, and since then, we've been able to share advice and wisdom and thoughts and our successes and our failures. And one thing I appreciate so much about Matt is that we do things together that I didn't often do with other people in my life. Like, for example, instead of going out, we would catch a play. He also reintroduced me, as I had done them before, but it had been a while, to hiking and sailing, which are things that align with my new goals of being more active in my life. Letting go of old relationships and making room for new ones has really helped me to stay on track with where I want to be. Also, know that you don't have to go on this journey alone or any journey towards change. But I would say that if you are feeling lonely, you may just need to get around the right people to help you on your way. The last thing I want to share with you today that I did on my health journey is that I actually didn't look at a scale unless I was at the doctor's office and it couldn't be avoided. But at home, I made the decision not to look at the scale. If you are on a weight loss journey, this may or may not be the right decision for you. For some people, it is a huge motivator, and that's great. For me, I know that I didn't want my journey to be about a specific number. I wanted to change how I was living, and for me, looking at a scale just made it mentally harder for me to stick to my goals if the changes I was making in my head weren't showing up on the scale yet. But no matter how or what change you are trying to make in your life, decide the best and most empowering way to track how you are doing. Yes, you should absolutely track it somehow, but that somehow doesn't necessarily need to be the way some expert tells you. It can and should be the way that works best for you. I started noticing and celebrating my non-scale victories. I love to dance, especially on stage, and it was not long before I noticed that my body was moving and grooving better than it ever had before. Another example is you might notice you have more energy throughout the day, which allows you to tackle your day with greater enthusiasm and less fatigue. Suddenly, you're able to take the stairs without feeling winded, or you find yourself no longer needing that mid-afternoon nap, although I do love a good nap, but only if you want it. These are signs your body is becoming healthier and stronger, even if the scale doesn't immediately reflect it. Another non-scale victory is feeling more confident in your clothes. And this doesn't mean fitting into a smaller size, but rather how you are carrying yourself. Maybe you catch yourself standing a little taller or walking with a bit more swagger. You may even start wearing outfits that you previously avoided because now you feel good in them. I have admittedly and truly unapologetically have an addiction to Fashion Nova. I just love their stuff. And one of the best moments in my journey was when they had an outfit that I really wanted, but the only one that was available was a size smaller than what I normally ordered. So I took a chance and I put it on without any struggle. Baby, you could not tell me nothing that day. And this is the kind of confidence I'm talking about. This kind of confidence isn't just about appearance or the size on the tag. It's about feeling comfortable in your own skin and embracing the person that you are becoming. Another example is your mood might start to improve, which is a huge non-scale victory. When you take steps to care for your body, whether through exercise or better nutrition or simply getting enough sleep, it has a profound effect on your mental and emotional well-being. You might notice that you're less irritable, more patient, and generally more positive overall. And these changes in mood are a direct result of treating your body well and acknowledging the hard work you're putting in. So what I've found is actually that the non-scale victories have kept me the most motivated. It is natural to want immediate results. I definitely struggle with being an impatient person, so I get it. You want the results and you want it now. And that's actually kind of a big part of American culture in general. But sustainable progress often happens gradually. By focusing on the small but significant victories, I was able to stay encouraged and maintain a positive mindset about my journey. They reminded me that progress isn't always linear, and actually, when I think about all parts of my life and what I've been through, I would even say that it's almost never linear. But every step forward, or even every tumble, no matter how big or small, can be a step in the right direction. This journey is about how you feel, how you live, and how you grow as a person. These victories are a huge testament to the positive changes happening beneath the surface that others may not see, or maybe you may not notice yet, but they are still worth celebrating. So don't wait till the big moment that everything is perfect to celebrate. Celebrate everything along the way. To wrap this episode up, I want to go back to what I was talking about in the beginning of this episode. For a long time, I had internalized the idea of being big as synonymous with being valuable, noticeable, and strong, a way to command attention and assert my presence. So at about 70 pounds lost, I was asked to perform in a review show for plus-size performers. For a moment, I was taken aback because I had really been focusing on being healthy and losing weight, and it wasn't until I was asked to do a show with such a specific theme that I was able to reflect on if I even identify as big anymore. Don't get me wrong, I didn't see myself as thin, and I certainly support celebrating bodies of all shapes and sizes, but it was just a moment that made me question, how do I feel about myself? However, it really didn't take long for me to say yes to the show because as I thought about it, I realized I am and will always be big. It just means something different to me now. As I was reflecting, I began to appreciate the deeper aspects of my identity that truly define me. I started to see my strength wasn't just in size, but in my unique ability to persevere, the way I inspire others, and the gift I have of being able to live authentically. My visibility that was so attached to being big didn't come from how I looked, but from the energy and passion that I bring to everything I do. And I realized that my value isn't something that fluctuates with my weight. It's just something that is constant and rooted deeply inside who I am as a person. Having this realization really brought a sense of freedom because even though in the past I found a way to feel confident with my size, but after going on this journey, I was no longer tied to an external measure of worth because even feeling good about it in some ways is an external measure. I have always been a person who is very passionate about pursuing their goals and dreams, but I can say today I feel even more liberated to pursue my life, my health, my happiness, and all on my own terms. What I do is I just keep focused on what makes me feel good, without the pressure of conforming to any other image than the one I see in my own head. This has allowed me to see myself in a new light, to value who I am beyond the physical, and to embrace a healthier lifestyle that truly honors all parts of me. So yes, I lost a lot of weight, but I actually feel bigger and better than ever. Until next time, see you later, Snack. Thanks for listening to this episode of Snack Size the podcast. But if you're still feeling a little hungry, then head on over to snacksizepod.com and feast on all your favorite episodes. While you're there, follow me on social media. I love to stay connected. Until next time, keep it tasty. And remember, you are always the flavor of the day.